Since my election, U.S. stock markets have soared 70%, adding more than $12 trillion to our nation's wealth, transcending anything anyone believed was possible. This is a record. It is something that every country in the world is looking up to. They admire. The golden age of America begins right now. From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first.
Hey, it's Jonathan. So in this video, I wanted to just take a step back and just see if there was any undeniable proof of the 18.6-year cycle or any of these other cycles that W.D. Gann talks about, such as the 20-year cycle, 30, 40, 60, etc. Is there any undeniable proof? Now, the two videos that I just shared with you just before, 2 times Trump has been elected at probably the worst time in history. Now, for Trump, all he had to do when he was first elected in 2016 was to sit the cycle out, shut up, not make many changes to the economy, and let the cycle work for him. Now, the reason why I say that is because, as we know from McWhirter's course, no government can determine the outcome of the economic cycle. Okay, the economic cycle is based on natural laws. And if you just go back through McWhirter's course, you can download her book for free, or jump inside the actual program that we have for McWhirter. She will tell you that no government can defy the natural laws of the cycle. So the first video I shared with you was from 2020, just as Trump came into office. Now, he's talking about the stock market. He's talking about how good it is, how big it is, how much it's grown since he became president. What happened shortly after that? Well, he came right into, this was on the 4th of February, he came right into the 2020 recession. Now, this was obviously at the end of his term, no doubt, but basically, no government can defy these natural laws, okay? So the 2020 recession was always going to happen. All we needed to know was what the catalyst of that recession was. The next thing on top of this was his most recent declaration of the golden age of America, and that America is going to be the biggest superpower in the world yet again. Am I denying that? No, I'm not at all. Is it possibly achievable? Yes, definitely achievable. However, it has to be done at the right time in the cycle. And right now, Mr. Trump is saying this basically at the top of the cycle. Now, as you may know, I am relatively bullish this year. That's based on one of Gann's rules, which is inside his decade cycle. If you want to go out there and research Gann's decade cycle, you might be able to determine exactly why I'm bullish in 2025, and then why I'd be less bullish in 2026 or 2027 and further out. If you're inside the yearly forecasting program, I already explained that to you, and I also told you the alternative patterns that could play out depending on how we go in this couple of years. But the thing we must know is that we are at the end of this cycle. Okay, we're at the end of the 18.6-year cycle. We're at the end of the Gann wave cycle. Okay, so that's one of the waves is about to turn down. We're at the end of a lot of these smaller cycles too. You know, they're starting to turn down very soon. But then we have to ask the question, what proof do we have of these cycles, and can they be found in the actual data that we're analyzing? And that is the point of today's video, because I'm going to give you undeniable proof that these cycles exist. And the way that I'm going to be doing that is through, well, cyclical analysis. But if you don't have the ability to do this through timing solutions, you can do this through a periodogram or time cycle analysis. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to open up some long-term data, okay? So inside our long-term data, we've got data going back to 1789. This is an advantage to us because a lot of people only have data, depending on your data source, you know, back 20 years, back 100 years. If you're lucky, you might get data back to 1900, and if you're even lucky, you might have data going back to 1880. So there is some data sources that go back that far. However, we have data here going back to 1790, and it doesn't look very nice. It is more so monthly data. Basically, just goes across for the whole month, so it's not very pretty to look at. But what we have here is at least a data source of highs and lows that we can use to analyze all the economic cycles. Once we get to around the 1900s or 1880 for some data sources, we can see that the data becomes more clearer to see, and then as we go further on, all the ticks, etc., are basically perfected. Okay. Now this goes out to around February 2025, or at least January is what I've updated to last. Now, what I'm going to be using is I'm going to be using this TS Spectrum Plus, and this is going to find or reveal the cycles that we are basically analyzing. Now, I talk about these cycles, and if you look at it from face value, you go, oh, cycles are, do we have any proof for that? What's the real advantage of this? Well, the further back we go in time, the more dominant these cycles become. So I'm going to add another 0 to this min-max period, and that's going to basically give us all the cycles in the curve, I should say, all the cycles in the curves going back 400 years. 400 days, I should say, 450 days. I'm going to take this back to, I'm going to say, I want to get about a year. Okay, so we're going to go a minimum 1 year and maximum 400 years. And that's just going to comprise all the data. So we've got about 300 years of data roughly, and we just want to comprise all the data. I'm going to change this from Bartels down to Q Spectrum. I'm going to click Calculate. Okay, now this is going to analyze all the data. It's going to do it basically within 10-15 seconds. There we go, already done. I didn't even have to pause the video. So this is now going to show us all the cycles. If we scroll down the bottom, if we look at these yellow highlighted sections, okay, if we look at the yellow highlighted sections, I can hover over it. Up the top here, we can see the time, so you can just go over the time period here. If we go down the bottom, you can also see this red thing down here, and that's also telling you the time. So 2 ways to verify the time. And if I go up here to this green one, okay, so let me hover over it, we're going to see that it just tells us what time frame that is. So here is 1 year, here is a phase of a planet, here is 2 years, here is the 40 to 42 month kitchen cycle. Okay, so we now have like just these are just core periods that we would generally look for cycles to occur. So we can see that there's definitely a 1 year cycle in the markets. We can see that as we head down here, we also have a period here where we have a planetary cycle, not so strong, quite weak around here, but it is one of the peaks. Up here we have a 24-month cycle or a 2-year cycle, and obviously 2 is half of 1. If we learn about what the 2-year cycle is, it is also a planetary cycle, which W.D. Gann teaches. So we have basically the 2-year cycle, and we have the halfway point of that 2-year cycle being both peaks in this analysis here. Down here we can see that there's a roughly 32-month cycle. Up here we have 41 months, so just shy of that 40-month kitchen cycle. I've used the right-hand side here of this cycle instead of the left-hand side because it's the most dominant part of this. We can go down or we can go up, it doesn't really matter. There's a 6-year cycle. There's a 8-year cycle. Up here we have a 9-year cycle. Okay, this is a 9-year jugular cycle. Okay, and that's determined. So we know what the cycle is. You know, it's a 9-year jugular cycle, and we can see that this cycle is actually proven. Okay, there is cyclical analysis where we have highs and lows which occur roughly around that 9-year period. And down here we've also got a 11-year sunspot cycle. So for those of you who track the sunspots, we have verifiable proof that the sunspot cycle exists. Then we go around here, we can see there's not much action around this, 15-year cycle, etc. But then we come all the way up here, and this one up here is 18.6-year cycle. Now this 18.6-year cycle, if I just hover over it again and get out, this is the lunar node cycle, and that is what the 18.6-year cycle is. It tracks the moon's north node, okay, and it is 18.6 years in length. And we can see that one of the most dominant cycles in this range here is that 18.6 year cycle. So this is undeniable proof of the cycle's existence, and it is visible, clearly visible on this amount of data. So if I tell you, or if I make the suggestion that we're coming towards the end of an 18.6 year cycle, so we have a starting point, we have an ending point, we're coming towards the end of it, well, do we have any proof of what I'm saying? Well, yes, we can see that based on cyclical analysis, this market here resonates with the 18.6 year cycle, and it peaks out, and we're coming towards the end of this, so that's the warning time. And then the markets, or whatever we're looking at, can crumble or return back to their mean. If we go forward in time, we want more proof of other cycles, where we have a 30-year cycle. Okay. Now if we look up here, we can see that W.D. Gann's Saturn heliocycle sits here. Okay, Gann told us all these cycles. All we needed was the data. If we couldn't verify it ourselves, if we didn't know how to verify it ourselves, all we need is the data and some form of software or tool to be able to do this for us. Okay, if we go down to this next one, this is the Kybalion F wave. We can see that what is more stronger than the K wave? Well, W.D. Gann's 60-year cycle is more stronger. So this is 59 to roughly 60 years. There might be some discrepancy there, or period where it's sort of averaging 59.35 years basically. That is that period there, okay? There is undeniable proof too of Gann's master time factor, or his 60-year cycle, okay? Now as we come up to here, we run into the Uranus cycle, which is roughly 80 years. This will go out to the war cycle, etc. We can see that the markets don't really do much in this period. They're coming off a low around 80 years, but then we have 90 years, and we have the 100-year cycle also pointing at peaks. So we have the 90-year cycle, and we have the 100-year cycle. So what could be a 60-year cycle, or what could be, let's say for example, what could be a 30-year cycle? Well, we know the 30-year cycle is Saturn helio. What could be a 60-year cycle? Well, that could be 2 revolutions, okay, of the Saturn cycle. It could be. I'm not saying it is. Just trying to give you things to be thinking about. What could be the 90-year cycle? Well, the 90-year cycle could be 3 revolutions of the Saturn cycle. Again, not saying it is, just giving you ways to think about how these cycles can add up. It might be, we might have some form of conjunction with Jupiter, Saturn over a time period, and it might be 3 of these, okay? It might be 3 20-year cycles, or it might be 2 30-year cycles, okay? This is the way that we got to think about when we do the harmonics or mathematics of cycles and what creates these peaks. We know, for example, we have 18.6 years. That would take us out to around 36 years or so if we were to double it. So if we go out to 36-year period, we can see that there's minor reaction here around that 2 times. So we're getting basically a minor reaction here. Not exactly huge, so that it looks like the cycle is individual and just operates on its own accord. But we also can see that there is possibility of a 36-year cycle, which is slightly different in nature. And then we also have this 44-year cycle. So we have one that's around 33, I should say, 36 I mean, sorry. And then we have one that is around 44. So we have one that's around 36, and we have one that's around 44. So that's just something to keep in mind, all right? I just wanted to show you that there are ways that we can find these cycles. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to Bartels. I'm going to keep the same time frame, and now I'm going to recalculate it. So we've gone from Q wave and we've moved over to Bartels. And we can see now this is a different cyclical method, okay? So it's calculating the cycles in a different manner. We can see that we have a kitchen cycle, which if you look at that green panel up top, you can see it says 40-month kitchen. Okay, the cycle peaks out just after that. Around here we come into that 9-year juggler cycle. We can see that it's also being calculated here. This one here is 2 major peaks right on time of that 18.6-year cycle. So this is undeniable proof, regardless of how we calculate this cycle, that there is a cycle length of 18.6 years. As we head up here, we have also undeniable proof of this 44-year cycle. Okay, this is one that probably no one's talking about or even knows about. And then we have another undeniable proof of this 32-year cycle. We can change the calculation models, we can change the calculation method, using different forms of analysis. However, we just see the same peaks coming up and up again over and over again. It doesn't really matter. So that'll be enough for this video right now. I'll cut this off because we're going to get proof of this 18.6 year cycle no matter what I do. Okay, it's going to show itself. We've got it comes up as 8.7 years, so we've got that 9-year jugular cycle coming into effect. Different time frame or scale. We've got a decade cycle here, so 10-year cycle. And then we can see again that this kitchen cycle is also pretty prominent. But no matter what calculation model I use, this 18.6 year cycle keeps showing up as a major peak in the market. Sorry, a major peak in the market, a major peak in cyclical analysis. So this is undeniable proof and that you need to be following this model, okay? That's all I have.